Jesus went into the temple of God and cast out all them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers and the seats of them that sold doves. So instead of casting out Romans, he goes in and he casts out Jewish people who are up in the temple exchanging money and selling doves, selling sacrifices.
Why is that such a big deal? Like, people were supposed to sacrifice. Why is that an issue?
Exactly. So I don't know all of the reasons here. Most of the sacrifices would be purchased outside of the temple traditionally. And to buy a sacrifice, the tradition is you can't use your foreign currency. So if you're coming into Jerusalem, as a good practicing Jew needs to do, you've got the 3 festivals in the year, Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles. When you come, you exchange your foreign currency for temple currency. And you can see how the Sadducees, who are in charge of this trade business there, you can see how they start to say, we've got these people over a barrel. Because for them to be good practicing Jews, they have to buy a sacrifice, because they're not going to be able to bring a lamb or doves with them if they're coming from, say, Greece or Italy or from Libya or northern Egypt, any of those places.
Even Galilee.
Or even Galilee.
70 miles north, you're going to sell your animal up in the north, get the money. It's way easier to deal with. You protect it in your pocket, get down to Jerusalem, and transition it to the drachmas at the temple. But who controls the exchange rate? Who makes money off that exchange?
Well, Sadducees. So what happens is there's clearly an increased charge going on from year to year to year, where they're now stealing basically from the people in order to be a good practicing Jew. And then you go to buy your animal for the sacrifice, and once again, they've got you over a barrel. So they can set that price anywhere they want, and they can keep inflating that price artificially from year to year to year.
Because it's a monopoly.
It's a monopoly. And now they've taken that practice from out in the markets around the temple. Now they've brought them into the temple courtyards, probably under the porticos. and here they are, making all of this money. Jesus comes in, and he cast out all them that sold. This is this is another of my favorite unsung miracles of the New Testament. If you read books on the miracles of Jesus, you're probably not going to find a section on the triumphal entry as a miracle, and you're probably not going to find the cleansing of the temple in any of those books as a miracle. But I'm here to tell you it's a miracle. And if you don't believe me, try going into a huge sporting event, and I'll let you have a whip, to use John's first cleansing of the temple account. You can use a whip, but you have to be alone, and go and get all of the concessioners to leave that sports venue, that stadium, that arena, whatever it is. You, all by yourself, kick them all out, and then tell me it's not a miracle that one man went in against this entire group of people who are making an incredible amount of money for the Sadducees, and they hold all the power with the temple guards, and he kicks them out. Brothers and sisters, this is one of my favorite miracles, because if you're not careful, you'll read this story and think we're just talking about a bunch of stones and mortar and buildings. I love Paul's question to the Corinthians. What? Know ye not that ye are the temple of our God? And all of a sudden you say, so the cleansing of the temple that happened on that day 2,000 years ago could be seen as a symbolic object lesson for what Jesus is asking to do with me. But I have to let him in first. He's the one who cleanses my temple. He's the one who gets rid of those elements of my soul and of my life that are cankering me, that are holding me back, that are evil. He's the one who cleanses the temple. And then he doesn't stop there. There's miracle number 2. It says, verse 14, the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them.
Amazing.
Now, previous to this, How would the blind and the lame have felt in the temple with all of these Pharisees, Sadducees, and scribes walking around looking down their nose at them?
Yeah, not welcome. If you turn to Isaiah 56 and Isaiah 58, there's passages there where Isaiah prophesies about how eventually the temple will be welcoming to everybody who's worthy. But anciently, in Isaiah's time, it was like if you're lamed or had certain other physical situations, you weren't allowed in the temple. Matthew has us reference Jeremiah connecting Jesus' actions to things that Jeremiah the prophet did during the time of Lehi around 600 BC in Jerusalem. Verse 7, or chapter 7, the word that came to Jeremiah from the Lord saying, stand in the gate of the Lord's house and proclaim there this word and say, hear the word of the Lord, all ye of Judah, that enter these gates to worship the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, amend your ways and your doings, and I will cause you to dwell in this place. Trust ye not in these lying words, saying, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord are these. Very interesting that Jesus is echoing Jeremiah saying, just because there's a building doesn't mean you'll be saved. In the time of Jeremiah, people believed that because there was the temple, that meant all was well in Zion. And Jeremiah stand in the gate of the temple saying, it is not enough to have the building. You have to have the inward temple vessel cleansed so that the outward vessel of the temple actually helps. And Jesus is doing something similar. And to connect this to the Book of Mormon, it seems that Laman and Lemuel were part of the crowd in the time of Jeremiah who felt that the presence of the temple alone was enough to protect them and the city from anything they might do and would protect them from the Babylonians. And Nephi and Jeremiah, Lehi and others, including Jesus, teach it's not enough to have the building. It's amazing. You have to have the inward vessel cleansed.
So these references from the Old Testament, from Isaiah 56 and from Jeremiah 7, look back in Matthew 21, verse 13. He said unto them, so this is before he heals the sick folk that come into him. Verse 13, and he said unto them, it is written, my house shall be called the house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. There's a subtle nuance going on here, because here we are in the week of the Savior's infinite sacrifice, his atoning sacrifice. In John's gospel, the cleansing of the temple, by John's account, occurs when Jesus is 30, at the very beginning of his ministry. So it's possible that he either cleansed the temple twice, once at the beginning, and John tells us that story, and once at the very end, where the synoptics tell that story. Matthew and Mark have it reversed in the order, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the amazing thing is that in John's account, he refers to it as my Father's house in his telling at the beginning of the ministry. And now here at the end of his ministry, he's calling it my house. Now, if you think about that in the context of you, as a child of God, a child of the covenant, an adoptive son or daughter of Jesus Christ through the covenant, and now as a disciple of Christ, you can see that through that ministry, Jesus is now staking ownership, staking a claim over you and over the temple. He's calling it his house, the house of the Lord. And you'll also notice he's not defiling the sacrifices or the law of Moses or telling them they shouldn't be doing all those things. What he's rejecting is how they're robbing from the people, basically, in order for them to get gain, while the people are just trying to keep the law of Moses. I love the fact that they're now gone. These poor people who have been blind and lame, they come into the temple and he healed them. I could be wrong, but for me, I love looking at this two-part miracle of Jesus taking things out of the temple that are defiled and unclean and bringing things into the temple that have been judged in the past to be defiled and unclean and making them pure and whole. It's almost as if we get this miracle of forgiveness of sins of commission, where he helps us get rid of those things out of our life that we're doing that we shouldn't be doing, and where sins of omission are being overcome, where he brings into our life things that before we haven't let in that really need to be a part of our life. I love this miracle that, once again, often gets overlooked as a miracle.